If you want your employees to deliver remarkable experiences, you have to expose them to what a remarkable experience looks like.
Welcome to the latest episode of Over a Pint. This week, I'm really excited to have Joey Coleman, the author of Never Lose a Customer Again. We use this book all the time internally. I've basically annoyed my team by making them switch so many of our systems after reading Joey's book. I think I read it. You were actually on a Q&A with Nicholas Kuzmich in his private group one time. And I was like, I furiously took notes and then basically went home and was like, all right, guys, we're changing everything.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, thanks to your team for being patient with the changes.
They're used to that now since that, like, I've had a few other moments like that, and I'll just come and be like, all right, guys, we're changing everything.
I love it. The joy of being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
This is the way it usually works.
Get ideas. Luckily, I got people who are really good at dealing with that.
Nice.
But it's good. So I'm really curious, like, you are like one of the best I've ever, like, your book and then Be Our Guest from Disney are like the two main customer ones that are.
Wow. Thank you. That's high praise. I'm definitely familiar with that book. I appreciate being included in the.
I share those two on stage when I talk about service. I'm like, these are the two books you want to get. So, but I'm curious how you went to that, but you started as a criminal lawyer. Like, how does that transition happen?
Yeah, it's been an eclectic past, to say the least. When I basically, every job I've ever had has been about the human condition. So why do humans do the things they do? And what can we do to convince them or persuade them or influence them to do the things that we'd like them to do? And the way that worked in my own career path is I was a criminal defense lawyer. I was a business consultant. I taught at the postgraduate level. I ran a promotional products company, a division of a promotional products company. I ran an ad agency. Now I'm a full-time speaker and writer and consultant on all things customer and employee experience. And I guess the thread that ties it all together is this interest in human beings and this interest in the experiences that we create for people, whether that's in a courtroom, in an advertisement, in a consulting engagement, on stage, in selling a home, whatever it may be. The experiences that we create dramatically influence how people feel about us, how they think about us, and how they talk about us. And so I've pieced together my experience and my interactions over the years in a variety of different careers to kind of create this formula and methodology for creating the kind of remarkable experiences that keep your customers coming back for more.
So, because that's actually similar to mine of, like, I got a degree in history, and every time I had to do papers, mine was always on the experiences of people, not on like the big theme. So it'd be like, my big one was like World War I. Like, why did they go? What did like individuals experience while we were there? And like looking back, I'm like, it actually led perfectly to owning a marketing agency.
Yeah, absolutely.
That early on of like, yeah, let's talk about World War I soldiers.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, for what it's worth, Andrew, I think we live, I think the days of, hey, you pick what you want to do when you're 20 and you do that for your rest of your life. I don't know that those were ever good days, but they certainly aren't practical days now. I think, depending on whose research or whose studies you look at, the average adult is going to have somewhere between 7 and 20 jobs in their lifetime. More than a dozen of which are entirely different careers, like in different industries. And I actually think that leads to a more fulfilled, rich experience of life personally, not to mention the perspective it allows you to bring to the table in the various careers you might have. So I'm a big fan of that approach.
Yeah, it's pretty, like, I after university, I ended up doing concrete forming. And then here we are, real estate agent, marketing, all that fun stuff.
I love it.
I love one of the things that you actually, one of the questions someone has, like, can you ask him this right away? And he was very insistent on it being like one of the first questions. So before I get into some of the others, I'm really curious to your thoughts on automation in the customer service. And not just that, just like the entire process. Like, for instance, he was talking specifically with me about chatbots of like when a lead's generated and having it all be automated and they don't get involved for like months potentially. How do you feel about, like, automating that stuff?
Yeah, so like most things in life, I don't think that automation by definition is bad. or good. I think it's the application and the use and how it creates an experience. A couple observations about automation. From a business owner point of view, or from a salesperson point of view, or a real estate agent point of view, there's some real benefits to automation, and it allows you to serve more people in a shorter amount of time or at the same time. And as we look at the influence that AI is already having and is going to continue to have, we are going to experience, I believe, in our lifetimes, interactions where we prefer an automated AI chatbot to a human because they will be better at solving our problems. So I don't think this is going to be oh, the robots are coming for us, or this is bad. Where I think we run into problems is when automation does two things. It diminishes personalization or eliminates personalization, and when automation is not done transparently. Here's what I mean by those two things. First and foremost, eliminating personalization. If you're using automation to make your life easier, but in the process, you make your customer or your prospect or your lead feel less than personally connected to you, that is going to have a long-term detrimental effect on your business, on your operations, on your goals, on whatever you're trying to accomplish. If we use automation to increase our response time, or reduce our response time, make our response time faster, I think automation can be incredibly effective. And if we use it as a bridge to a more personal conversation, a more personal connection, I think that can work very well too. Which brings me to that second point of the transparency or the awareness of automation happening. What I love to see is when a chatbot immediately identifies itself as a chatbot and a robot. So there's no illusion as to what's actually happening here. The research actually shows that when you do that, customers have a better experience. They have a better experience because they can more accurately manage their expectations. So I think if you are going to be using automated tools in your communications, you want to have a human checking in on them. You want to have a human responding if the individual escalates out of it, and you want to be clear that it's an automation. Let me give you a quick example of how that works. So in the beginning of my book, I say, before we even get into the book, I say, if you'd like to have an experience of reading this book, sign up to experience the book. And you go to a landing page and you enter some information, including the reading speed that you think you're going to approach the book at, whether you're listening on audio or whether you're reading it physically, kind of what some of the things are going to be going on, and you share some information. You then get put into an automated sequence. Now, make no mistake about it, it is an automated sequence. However, if at any point you respond to any of the automated messages that you receive, that comes directly to my inbox. We had one just this week with a reader from Spain who sent an email back answering the question I had asked in the auto-generated email, and then said, P.S., who's reading this anyway? And I replied, hey, thanks for your answer. And I referenced the answer so that they would know it was, either a real human or some high-level AI. And then I said, P.S., it's Joey, the author. To which he responded back an hour later, no, it can't be. To which I sent him a proof of life photo of me holding a picture with his name written on it, that basically said, no, really, it's me. And it created, I like to think, a remarkable experience for that reader. I think that's the possibility that is available to us when we combine automation with personalization.
I've tested a few chatbots. I've never been a big fan, so I ended up taking them all out. But when I did actually did that. I like right away identified it, but I named him, so it was Bruce. It was Bruce, our automated one. Now that's our Slackbot's name in our internal Slack. Is Bruce, the internal Slack bot.
Oh, I love it. One of my favorite insurance companies, if you can have a favorite insurance company, is a Canadian company, a Canadian insurance agent by the name of Excalibur is the name of their company. And they have an AI bot that is on Alexa. So you can say, Alexa, give me a car insurance quote, and it'll give you the car. You see everywhere, everybody's Alexa just activated listening to that. And you can get a car insurance quote from them. If you go to the Excalibur website, you will actually see Aiden, who is their AI tool or their AI bot, has a picture on the profile page and a bio about her. So it's kind of like everybody's in on the joke, right? They're having fun with it, they're being playful with it, and they've had incredible success as a result.
So it actually brings up one that I actually hadn't thought about till right now. What are your thoughts when you're looking at like, especially like a business's professional website, of like the difference between like being professional on the site while still like putting a lot of personality and having, because this is one agents struggle with a lot of like how much personality and fun to have versus how much professionalism. Like I err more personally to the personality side. Like my 404 error page is a GIF from Dumb and Dumber being like, the website is back that way.
Right. I
But
love it.
how are you, like, where do you find that balance generally?
Yeah, as somebody who used to be a criminal defense lawyer, who's also been a singer, who does crazy antics on stage and off stage, you might imagine I definitely skew towards the more personal. And here's the interesting thing. The research shows that websites that have a personal spirit, a personal voice, they kind of let the people shine, convert exponentially better than the ones that are quote unquote professional, right? And so I think at the end of the day, what we want to do is you never want your website to become a caricature of yourself, to become something that's non-representative of the reality of who you are. But you do want your website, I think, to accurately capture your spirit. And so I'm a big fan of everybody on your team having a bio page on the website that includes their photo, that includes a description of what they do professionally, that includes some highlights of what they do personally, because when we share that information, what it allows a viewer to do is make personal and emotional connection to us. I can look at the picture in the background of our video screen here, and I see what appears to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, a painting from the Batman series of the Joker leaning out the window, right? And so when I see that, is that quote unquote professional? Is that real estate approved? No. But does that give me some insight into your personality? Does that make me connect with you as both a lover of art and potentially a lover of pop culture? Yes. And then you mentioned Dumb and Dumber. And if I'm seeing it correctly, the other painting behind you is a painting of a scene from the movie. When you look at the background on my video screen, you can see some little toys that we have back here, some Seth Godin props. There's Lego sets that I've built with my boys all around. So is that professional? Well, maybe, because I'm all about experience, but it's certainly personal. And the more personal information we share with our prospects and with our customers, the more connection we'll be able to create with them.
I've noticed that a lot. Like it was completely unintentionally about a year ago when I started filming these regular videos. So I have like a Facebook group where every day I'd come in and like answer someone's question. And it just happened for like a week. I had pop culture shirts on, and half the engagement ended up being people talking about it. At the point I had to start like ordering new shirts just to keep up. And then eventually I just couldn't keep up with more.
I love it. I love it.
But then we've done games where all like, so my bookcase here, I got a ton more on there of like, and it becomes like a game like, guess how many pop culture references are in the background of these videos.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, and it creates opportunity for connection. It creates opportunity for laughter. I mean, let's put it this way. I don't think in the history of business there's ever been anyone who said, "Oh, I want to work with that company because they're professional." No, we want to work with the company because they deliver a remarkable experience, because they do a great job, because they take the job seriously. But to me, we've kind of decided, well, it's either business or personal. And I think that's a misconception. Business can be personal, business should be personal. And the more the personalities of your employees are allowed to shine as part of the customer experience, the longer your customers will want to hang around.
What do you find are like the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to like customer service? Like I'm sure you've been hired in the past to like come in and help companies with their customer service. Like what do you see as like the main big mistakes that you see?
I think here's the challenge with that question, Andrew, and I appreciate the question, but man, we have 50 years for this episode? I appreciate it. I mean, there's so many things. I think a couple of the big ones that come to mind are as follows. Number one, I think most companies say they care about customer experience and say they care about customer service, but if you look at their structures, they are anything but indicative of that care. So, for example, I had an experience just earlier today where I was trying to return a product that I bought online. Now, this is an expensive home product that I purchased, and they have a big guarantee all over their website of 100 days to return it. I got the product. I literally used it for one day, and I realized it was not going to work for the use case that I needed it for. Now, what's interesting is I had called in and placed the order over the phone instead of placing it through their website to check on the specific use case that I had, which I realized was a touch of an anomaly from what they normally did. And they said, oh, no problem, 100-day return. I used it for one day, and I said I need to process the return. And they decided to come back and say, oh, okay, no problem. You just have to pay for shipping, and it's $60. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of pricey on shipping, I got to say. Plus, where was this conversation of paying for shipping in all of the conversations we had before? So being a customer experience guy, I said, hey, I want to return it. It didn't work. It barely got out of the box. I'd love it if I didn't have to pay the shipping. Now, to be candid, Andrew, part of the reason I was asking is because I'm a customer experience guy. I'm always looking to see how companies will handle customer experience. But they immediately hid behind a policy. They immediately hid behind the fine print. Well, if you would have scrolled down to the 15th paragraph of our guarantee, we say that you can get a refund in 100 days minus expedited shipping. And I'm like, why does it have to be expedited if I'm returning it? Well, that's our policy. Great. Well, can we talk to a supervisor and see if there's an exception? Sure. They put me in the queue to talk to a supervisor via email chat. They said, one's not available right now. We'll get back to you. 4 days later, I get a message back that says, the supervisor's denied your request. Literally, that's what it said. The supervisor has denied your request. Sorry. And I was like, wow. So here you have this opportunity to create a remarkable experience by just when somebody comes to do business with you and they don't have an experience, the offboarding experience of them leaving your company is just as important as the onboarding experience. So to come back to your question, look at your policies. See if your policies are really as customer focused as you claim they are. Number two, where are you putting your money? Are you putting your money where your mouth is? Most business owners, if you ask them what their marketing budget is, they can tell you what their marketing budget is. If you ask them what their customer experience budget is, they have no idea. They start to hem and haw. They're like, well, it's a kind of a gestalt of a bunch of things we take into consideration. No. How much money are you allocating to creating remarkable experiences for the people who've already signed on the dotted line, who've already said they want to be a customer, who are paying to keep the lights on, who are paying for you to have food on your table? How much are you reinvesting into those people as opposed to the spraying out your message to the general public, hoping that something sticks and hoping that someone comes back? Why is it that when we sign up to be a new customer of a company, we get a better deal as a new customer than we do as a veteran customer? Cable companies, cell phone companies are notorious for this one. That's why so many people, there's an entire industry that cancels contracts and re-signs up to get the better deal. There's so many customers that do that. What if there was a cable company or a cell phone company or any type of company that came along and said, here's the deal. Each year you're with us, you'll pay less. Wait a second, what? Each year you are with us as a customer, you will pay less than you paid the year before. Why? Because we've recouped our marketing cost, because we know what it's like to deal with you. We already have everything up and running. Things are going smoothly. Why should we charge you more for being a guest? Shouldn't you get a privilege or a bonus or, something special for continuing to be loyal? I think you should. So that's a really long way of saying lots of times the very structures in our business are causing the problems. Lots of times customer experience and customer service is lip service in an organization as opposed to being a prime directive, a commitment that the entire organization is behind. Last but not least, the people who are responsible for customer experience in most organizations are the lowest paid, least empowered employees of all.
True.
There's a problem with that.
Yeah.
If the people who are responsible for keeping your customers happy and connected are the lowest paid, least empowered employees in your business, here's what I can promise you. Your business will fail. I'm not saying it will fail this year. I'm not saying it will fail 5 years from now, but it will fail. The companies that stand the test of time are the ones that put a high emphasis and priority on the experiences that they're delivering for their existing customers, and they prioritize that over all other experiences, with the notable exception maybe of the employee experience. But I think the employee experience and the customer experience are two sides of the same coin. So it's all under that experience umbrella.
So I'm curious because like I've actually worked with a lot of teams who, whether it's customer service or just like following up with leads, they have the issue of like getting team members on board to do it the way they like, the way they want. Like, how do you go about like getting your team into that mindset of always providing that great service?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. It's impossible to ask your team to deliver a remarkable customer experience if they don't know what one is. And the average team member in our society today has no idea what a remarkable experience looks like, because the standard for customer experience globally is lying on the ground. It's so poor. That's the bulk of their life experience. Quick story, and I'll tell it quickly because I'm realizing that these answers are very voluminous in the number of words they're using, very verbose in the number of words, and I want to make sure we get as many questions as possible. I had the opportunity to give a presentation to a company. I met with the CEO and he said, I want you to teach my people how to deliver Ritz-Carlton, first class, white glove service. I said, got it. He said, no, you got to understand, Joey, Ritz-Carlton, first class, white glove service. I said, understood. We go the very first day to the day-long workshop I'm going to be. He introduces me and he says, ladies and gentlemen, Joey Coleman is here to help us be better at delivering Ritz-Carlton, first class, white glove service. Big round of applause. I stepped up front of the stage. I said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited to be here. We're going to start off with 3 questions. I'm going to ask you a question. If you answer yes to the question, I'd love it if you could raise your hand nice and high above your head so I can see it. First question, how many of you have ever spent the night at the Ritz-Carlton? The CEO proudly raised his hand. The head of sales raised her hand. The CFO raised their hand. And no one else in the 200-person audience raised their hand. I said, great. Next question. Question number 2. How many of you have flown first class? The CEO proudly raises his hand. The head of sales raises her hand. The CFO puts her hand down and says, do you know how much more expensive it is just to arrive a couple feet before everybody else? And no one else in the 200-person audience raised their hand. I said, great. Last question. How many of you have ever had a meal that was served to you by waiters wearing white gloves? Even the CEO and the head of sales put their hands down. I turned to the CEO and I said, it is impossible to ask our employees to deliver an experience for which they have no context. The biggest problem I see with getting employees to deliver remarkable customer experiences is twofold. Number 1, they've never had a remarkable customer experience. Number 2, the experience they're having as an employee of that organization is anything but remarkable. If you want your employees to take care of your customers, you have to take care of your employees. If you want your employees to deliver remarkable experiences, you have to expose them to what a remarkable experience looks like. It's that simple, but it's not easy.
So where, if you were like, okay, I want to expose my team members, do you have like a place where like, hey, go check this out, go do this to experience it? Like, do you have places you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, I mean, you started this conversation by being kind enough to compare my book to, Be Our Guest, the book that's all about Disney. When you think about, a lot of companies take their top salespeople and they reward them with a trip. This happens in the real estate industry all the time, right? Our top performers are going to Cabo or whatever it may be. Here's the thing. What usually happens is they go somewhere. They're forced to go to a certain number of meetings during the day so that we can write it off on our taxes. And those meetings are anything but fun or exciting. And then they're released to the wild to actually go enjoy themselves because this is the first vacation they've taken in months, if the only one they take all year. And then they come back and it's more of the same. Instead, what I would suggest that we do is we go and we have a collective experience together, and then we talk about that experience and what analogies or examples or metaphors we can pull from that experience into our business operations. One of my clients every year on the anniversary of an employee's employment. So employee comes in, starts working for the company, they get to their 1-year anniversary. The employer says, hey, we want to help you celebrate your 1-year anniversary with us. Here's how that works. We're going to send you to the Ritz-Carlton for the weekend, Friday night and Saturday night. You check in Friday after work, you check out on Sunday afternoon. Everything's covered. Room service. You want to rent movies, hang out, do whatever you're going to do. It's all billed to the company. We're picking up the cost. Bring your spouse, bring your significant other, bring whoever you want to have as your guest. Here's the only thing. Next week, I want you to do a 15-minute presentation on your experience of being a guest of the Ritz-Carlton and how we could adopt some of those type of experiences or behavior in our organization. You actually educate your employees by having them have the experience, and then you bring the cycle full circle by having them teach their peers and colleagues. As this goes on over time and every employee has the chance to stay at the Ritz-Carlton, now everyone has a framework or a context. But it doesn't have to be that extreme. You could even just give everybody the chance to have car service. You could bring in massage therapists and have everybody get a massage at the office. You could deliver a remarkable unboxing experience to someone's house. You're only limited by your own creativity as far as the experiences you can provide to your employees to give them a context for the experience you're asking them to deliver for your customers.
And how much, so I was curious on like the employee side, even on the client side, because like especially in real estate, client gifts are a big thing. And personalizing them is also big. I know you talk about that a lot. I love personalizing gifts. Actually, there's 2 parts. First, what are your thoughts on branding the gifts you send people?
Awesome. So let's talk about that. So I have a very strong opinion on this.
Yeah.
If the item has your logo on it, it's not a gift. It's a promotional product. It's a marketing tool. I'm not against promotional products. I'm not against marketing tools, but let's stop deluding ourselves to think that it's a gift. And if you doubt the validity of this statement or the position I'm making, I ask you to imagine yourself on Christmas morning or one of the nights of Hanukkah or your birthday, and you get this beautiful wrapped box, and it's from your grandmother. And you open the box, and inside is a sweater with her name on it. You are not wearing that sweater. You love your Nana, but you are not wearing that sweater out in public with her name on it. The reality is when we give someone a gift with our logo on it, it's about us. It's about what are you going to do to promote me? What are you going to do to think about me? That's not an effective way to go about giving gifts or presents. Instead, I like the idea of giving a present that is so thoughtful, that is so carefully conceived, that it lets the recipient know that you were paying attention even when they thought you weren't paying attention. You've observed something. You've investigated something. You've paid attention to know that something would really move the dial. Let me ask you this, Andrew, and anybody who's listening or watching at home, you can play along too. I want you to think of the best gift you ever received in your life.
Good question.
Take a couple seconds and think about it. You don't have to tell me what it is, but just think of the best gift you ever received. Now, let me ask this. The person who gave you that gift, is their name written on that gift? Is their logo on that gift? And yet, you remember who gave you the gift. This isn't rocket science, friends. If you've given a good enough gift, you don't have to put your logo on it. If you're giving a crappy gift, a non-thoughtful gift, you have to put your logo on it because you want to remember that you gave them that gift because it was so thoughtless. Your half of it is you reminding yourself. So I'm not opposed to giving gifts. I love the idea of giving gifts. In my book, I talk about 6 key tools you can use to communicate with your customers in the first 100 days and beyond. And one of them is gifts and presents. I just want to make sure we have a proper definition of gift and a present. And I want it to be something that is thoughtful and meaningful to the recipient.
I'm curious on that front too, like making it personalized. And this is actually something I've chatted about with my team, and they find like, what's the balance of like, let's deep dive on their social to learn about them. Well, what's the line between deep dive personalized gift and like, okay, now it's creepy that you know all this
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah. The balance between looking at social media to do research and looking at social media to be a stalker. Is that what we're asking?
But like, especially like if you're giving someone a gift that it's like you've now gone back like 5 years in their history.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think the best gifts, the ones that avoid getting into that state of awkward, are things that you have some tangential understanding of. It's not so obscure that they feel like they've been, you hired a private investigator to do some behind the scenes research on them. That being said, there's a really fine line between finding something that creates a personal and emotional connection and going too far. Um, I would encourage anyone listening or watching to try to go too far. Try to go too far. It is better, in my experience, to overstep than to understep. It is better to try to come up with something personal and special, and maybe miss the mark than to not try at all. So I think if you limited yourself to only looking at their social media profile for the time that they've been a customer, that might be a good way to do it. So don't go back 5 years when they've been a customer for 5 minutes. I think listening to the conversations, most humans drop clues as to what matters to them all the time. And in this era where we are doing more and more meetings via Zoom and Skype and virtually, look around in the picture. You've now made two Dumb and Dumber references during the 30 minutes that we've been on this podcast or on this show. If I sent you something that was related to Dumb and Dumber, I'd probably have a pretty good understanding of I was going to hit the mark and you not being offended or not being bothered by it, right? It's okay to take a gamble. If somebody seeing this heard my reference to Lego and decided to send me a Lego set, even if I already had the Lego set, I would probably be accepting of that Lego set and excited about that Lego set, right? So it's, again, it's not as hard as we make it out to be. It's just a matter of listening and then taking action on what you've learned.
So I'm curious on the part of like over communicate, because that's actually or like the overstepping. It's an exact question that someone asked me to ask you about is where's the line? Like, can you almost like when you're communicating, like I think communication is obviously really important to let people know, but like, is there a point where you're over communicating and sending too much information to them?
Yeah. So clarify a little more by a scenario you might mean as far as over communicating and sending too much, like communicating too much, like a volume question, or a depth of personal information you're talking about or sharing. And so is it a quantity or a quality question?
I think for this one, they were talking about is more quantity. So like someone reaches out and like say they become a new customer today, like they signed on the dotted line. Where's the line now of I've sent them too many emails and texts or calls versus like not sending enough?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Andrew. I liken this stuff to dating because anything that you would do in a dating relationship that would get you slapped, you should not do in a professional relationship.
You gotta wait
Okay.
3 days to message them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you don't want to be weird and you don't want to be like, oh, I can't tell you that I liked you and wait 3 days and do that. But let's say you went on a first date. And I realize both of us are married, so it's been a while since we've been on a first date. But let's
2 years,
pretend,
yeah.
hypothetically, we were going on a first date. If after that date, you got 38 text messages in the first 12 hours after the date, I can guarantee you there isn't going to be a second date. You've got a class 5 clinger. Okay. You've got a big issue that's happening right now. So I think you can over communicate and over flood the messaging to especially a new customer. Let's talk about why that happens, though. In my experience, that happens more often with small to medium sized businesses than with large businesses. And here's why. Most small to medium sized businesses are close enough to the early days of their business that they're still trying to believe for themselves that they deliver value.
Yeah.
And what they're thinking is, well, if I deliver a bunch of value in the beginning, I will prove my value and I will prove that I was worth the investment. When the reality is, our customer already has the proof they need when they decide to sign on the dotted line. We want to reinforce their decision, but we don't need to keep selling. At the end of the day, the best sales advice I ever got was know when it's time to stop selling. A lot of businesses keep selling after the sale. And so I think you want to pace yourself on the communication. So many entrepreneurs, in my experience, flood their new customers with information. I did a project one time with somebody who was kind of in the info product space selling coaching, and we mapped out their customer journey. And what we found is that in the first 30 days, they sent 78 pieces of content. Now, I don't know about you. That makes me want to throw up just hearing that.
No
Oh,
way.
right. No way are you reading it.
Yeah.
By the way, their target market, entrepreneurs who felt overwhelmed. So stop and think about that. They are actually contributing to the overwhelm that they're allegedly trying to solve. So I think the question becomes, look at the communications you're having. And if we were to take a calendar and put a red push pin for every time we send a communication, take a calendar of 30 days, the first 30 days of the customer experience, and see how many red push pins you have. Do they all come on one date? Are they spread out over time? Do you give the customer a chance to catch a breath in between the communications? Or are you assaulting and overwhelming them with the volume of things you're asking of them and the things you're sending to them? Lots of times people think, oh, well, if I send them something, it's providing value. This happens all the time with books. People sign up, especially in the thought leader space. They sign up, and what do? Let me send you a book. Well, great. Now, as an author, on one hand, I love that, but I'm also very conscious of the fact that if somebody gets a book as a gift, there's an assumption by the recipient that there's an expectation that they have to read it. I don't know about you. I already have a big enough stack of books next to my bed that I'm already reading and planning to read that I don't really need another one. So again, think a little bit about what you're doing. I'm not opposed to sending the book, but if you send the book, why not put a little Post-it note and say, hey, read these 3 pages because I thought of you when I read this part of the book.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'll read 3 pages. I'll read 3 pages of any book. Yeah. And if I read those 3 pages and they're spot on and connect, number 1, I'm appreciative to you of sending the book. Number 2, I'll probably read the other pages in the book. Let's be careful not to overwhelm our people.
That's very similar to what I got a lesson. Do you know Michael Port?
I do. I know Michael very well.
It was an idea I got from one of his books of like, just pay attention to like articles you see out there that if it makes you think of someone, send them the article.
Absolutely. Yeah. And here's the thing. Whether they read the article or not kind of doesn't matter. Yeah. What matters is they feel that you're paying attention to them even when they're not there. One way that I've done this in the past with some clients is I'll go into Google Alerts and I'll do a Google alert for their name anytime their name appears in the news. And then when they get featured in the news for something, I can reach out and say, hey, happened to see in the news that you got this award. Congratulations. Hey, happened to see that you had this accomplishment. Congratulations. When I was a kid growing up, the life insurance salesman who sold insurance to my parents was famous for reading the local paper every day, cutting out any of the articles that mentioned us kids. I'm one of 7 kids, and sending that to my parents. Mm-hmm. Now, as a parent, and I know you're a parent, Andrew, your kids are a little bit younger. My kids are a little bit younger. But when they get to the point where they're starting to have more maybe public notoriety in the community, most parents are pretty excited when their kids get written up in the local paper for something. They're pretty excited when their kid gets an award or accomplishment and someone outside the family acknowledges that. Why? Because it makes them feel like they're doing a good job as a parent. So if we can deliver those type of interactions to our customers, it changes the game.
I'm curious your thoughts on one. It's kind of piqued in a weird way my thought on it. And I have a client who does it. We have clients who do different versions of it, but gifts, like agents are famous like around Christmas bringing a gift of like food or something like that. And then we have other clients who specifically avoid Christmas time because that's when everyone else is doing it. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on like that type of timing of one year reaching out and delivering value?
Yeah, 2 things. And I default to my good buddy John Ruhlin's thinking on this. If you're not familiar with John Ruhlin and his company and book, Giftology, The Art and Science of Strategic Appreciation, I highly recommend you check it out. Like John, my belief is avoid the major holidays. Everyone's giving gifts at Christmas.
Yeah.
Give your gift on Valentine's Day, on St. Patrick's Day, on Boxer Day. Fill in the blank. I don't care what the day is. Do something different
Mhm.
than what everybody else is doing. Number two, I'm always careful about giving consumables. What I mean is things that will either be eaten or drank or used and then they're gone. And the reason why is once the gift has been consumed, the memory fades. I would rather give an artifact, something that stays in the home as a reminder of the relationship I have with the person. Now, that doesn't mean you can't give a consumable, but if you want to give, maybe if you know that they're a wine drinker and that they love wine and they love this particular type of wine, and you go out of your way to find a bottle of that particular type of wine and you want to give it to them, I'd also give it to them with two beautiful pieces of stemware so they can enjoy the bottle of wine. And then when they drink from that stemware in the future, they will think of you. Now, instead of engraving your logo on that stemware, why not put their name on the stemware? Why not put their family crest or their family logo or an etching of their child's face or something like that that makes it about them? I think that totally changes the conversation. And now you've given an experience, not a consumable.
That's funny. So I've actually taken this lesson from you and implemented it, and it's actually also led to a lot of business for me. So
I love it.
one thing that we do is and it's not that often because I feel if I do it too much, then it'll actually then kind of go the other way because people post about it on social a lot. But if I know that someone drinks, I will get like a nice bottle of scotch, then I'll engrave. So like say you drank scotch, I would put the Joey Coleman edition engraved on the bottle itself. Because back to like what you're saying is they don't drink it. They leave it
Right.
on display.
They save it, and now you've given them a piece of art,
And everybody
right?
asks them about it. Like we get clients when someone going like, "Where did you get that? That's awesome." And
Exactly.
they all end up calling me like, "I think I
We
can."
got that from Andrew. You don't have to have your name on it. You don't have to have your logo on it. It's there. I totally agree. One thing I will flag, and I realize this may fall into my own picadillos more than anybody else's, but I think it's important to acknowledge. Don't presume that your customer likes the same things you like. Don't presume that they have the same habits you have. One of the things that I love about being on your show, and I so appreciated the way you invited me, Andrew, is the show is called Over a Pint. But you were very clear in the invitation that, hey, by the way, if you don't drink, that's okay. You can bring a glass of water. Now, as it turns out, I think you brought strawberry lemonade. I
Yeah.
brought a flavored Zip Fizz drink, right? You know, we're not drinking alcohol. Not that I'm opposed to that, but I don't drink. So if you give me a bottle of wine, it does not have nearly the impact as giving a bottle of wine to someone who actually drinks wine. But the other thing you want to be careful about is if somebody is a wine connoisseur, you are going to be hard pressed to give them a bottle of wine that really moves the dial for them.
Yeah.
So there's this fine line of when you find out if somebody has a huge love or passion about something, be cautious about playing in that space because you may misstep faster than if you did nothing.
Yeah, you don't want to give like a $20 bottle of scotch to someone who's always drinking $100 bottles.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why I love the idea of actually giving glassware or something like that instead, where you can spend more money, get them something really special that stands out and lasts a lot longer than a single bottle of scotch.
Yeah. Well, that's the one I'm always very careful about. Like I'll always look like, okay, do they drink? Like that's first I have to get confirmation that they drink. And then I have to get confirmation. And normally this is what I like about like for my business of like niching down to real estate is I almost always know somebody who knows them well.
Yes.
So I can then go kind of backdoor it a bit and find out from like their friends, do they drink? What kinds do they drink? And go
Well,
from
and real estate agents, in my experience, and I've had the pleasure to work with and speak to, thousands of real estate agents.
yeah.
Real estate agents, you are in a unique position that most businesses would die to be in. And that is, it is not only socially acceptable, but it is expected that you will spend time inside the customer's home.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, Andrew, but if you really want to know what someone cares about, step into their house. If you were to step into my house, you will see evidence of the three biggest loves beyond my wife and my two kids that we have. Number one, books. There are over 5,000 books in this house. You can't walk into this house and not see a boatload of books. Number two, art. You cannot walk into a room in this house and not see every wall covered with art. And it's a wide variety of eclectic art. Number three, travel. You cannot step into this house without seeing mementos and artifacts that we have picked up on our travels around the world. You now know three very powerful ways to connect with me: books, art, and travel. Now, again, you want to be careful. You want to pay attention to that. But as a real estate agent, when you go into a client's home to get ready to sell it, don't just be looking at the fixtures and, oh, how are we going to stage this? And look at their stuff. Look at what they care about. You know, is everything hyper organized, or are things kind of messy? Do they have a separate area for the kids with a playroom with toys? You know, one of the pro tips for gifting is don't gift the client, gift the people who are most important to the client. If you get a gift from me, that's great. If you get a gift from my wife or my boys, you have my attention, because you've gifted someone that I frankly care about more than I care about myself. And that's how you start to move the dial.
So one of the questions actually we got submitted by someone who actually I just gave your book to, and they're like going through it. They're like, I was hoping to finish it before so I could do more questions, but they did have a couple. One that they had, which I liked, was like, you advocate a lot of in-person stuff. How do you adjust with COVID and everything where like you can't be in person or shouldn't be?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and this is a trying time, to say the least. And of the 6 tools that I recommend using, one of them is in-person interactions. And yes, in COVID-19, don't do the in-person interactions. Be smart, people. Stay socially distanced. Avoid that. What you can do, though, is do your best to replicate in-person interactions. What do I mean by that? Let's say you have a Zoom call with a prospective client. And let's say, as part of your research, normally you would figure out what they liked to eat so that you could invite them to go to a restaurant that served the type of cuisine that they liked. Let's say that was already your habit, your process. Why not invite them to a Zoom lunch? And what you do is you say, here's the deal. I'm going to send you the menu for this restaurant that serves Italian food because I think you like Italian food. Go ahead and tell me whatever you'd like to order, and I will make sure that it shows up 10 minutes before our conversation, and then we'll be able to have lunch together. Now you've taken a Zoom call and created an experience out of it. So you've come as close as possible to modeling in person in a socially distanced world. I'm a big fan of sending items in the mail. That's one of the other 6 tools that I recommend in the book. You can combine the in-mail to create a pseudo in-person experience by sending them stuff in advance. One of the companies that I profile in the book, Cadre, does a great job of hosting happy hours. And one of the things that they've explored in recent months is actually sending happy hour supplies to the people who are going to participate in the Zoom happy hour. Right? So it changes the conversation when you send me, for example, I don't drink alcohol, but I love root beer. If you send me a 6-pack of root beer and then you invite me to the Zoom happy hour and you've provided the drinks as if you would if I showed up for the actual happy hour, I'm now having a different experience.
It reminds me of a great example recently of that is like the NBA's bubbled in Orlando. The Toronto Raptors, which is my team, they're like, for instance, last night, first playoff game, all the media members, they sent them all the different foods from the regular vendors as if they were in the stadium to their house, being like, here's the hot dogs and the nachos.
I love it. I love it.
Little extra piece of like every player when they arrived, they had photos of their family framed in their hotel room.
Yeah. You know what's, here's the crazy thing, Andrew. It's such a little thing, but it has such a big impact. Yeah. The reason you heard about the fact that when the players arrived, there was a framed photo of their family in the hotel room is probably because the players talked about that. They talked about it in social, they talked about it in interviews. When you create a remarkable experience, if we deconstruct the etymology of the word remarkable, it is worthy of talking about, worthy of making a remark about, worthy of acknowledging. That should be the standard you're going for in the experiences you create. I don't want to just chase social media likes for the sake of chasing the like. But one good way to know whether your efforts are really standing out is if your customers talk about them. If they post on social about the gift you sent them, if they share from stage about the experience they had with you, if when they're sitting at lunch with other friends of theirs, they're talking about the interactions they've had with you. That's how you know you're standing out.
I want to respect your time because I know we're almost out. And I have one last one I want to talk to you about because I've heard you talk about it before too, is one, gathering reviews from your clients of like when's the best time to do that, but then also how that, like the difference between that and getting feedback from clients on your service.
Yeah. So two things. I think that reviews and feedback are two separate yet similar things. And often businesses confuse whether it's more important to go after the review or go after the feedback. I would actually say it's first and foremost important to go after the feedback, because the feedback is a real-time evaluator on how you're doing on delivering a great experience to your customers. So give you an example. I'm in the middle of a multi-week project with a client. We're at about the halfway point, and I just scheduled a separate conversation that is independent of the consulting I'm doing with them, where all I'm going to ask them to do is give feedback on the process thus far. And I'm going to do that by asking three simple questions. What are we doing right now that we should stop doing? What are the things that we've been doing that you haven't liked that we should stop? What are the things that we haven't been doing that we should start doing?
Yeah.
And lastly, what are the things that we've been doing that we should keep doing? I call this the stop, start, continue question. What should we stop doing? What should we start doing? What should we continue doing? I want that feedback now during during the actual project, so that I can make real-time adjustments. If I ask them those questions after the project's done, I've missed the opportunity to improve and enhance their experience in the flow.
Yeah.
Next, asking for reviews. I think it is best to ask for a review after the accomplish phase. In my book, I talk about the 8 phases of the customer journey. And phase 6 is the accomplish phase. This is when the customer achieves the goal they had when they originally decided to do business with you. In a real estate scenario, this is once they're actually in the house moved in that you sold them. A lot of real estate agents think that the accomplished phase is sitting at the closing meeting and signing on the dotted line. No, no, no. That's a step in the process. It is a significant milestone in the process, but no one sits in their house and says, you know what, we should move. And we should hire a real estate agent that's going to create an amazing closing day experience. No, they're looking for the real estate agent who's going to find them the home that they're going to live in and grow with their family for the years to come. They're not going to know whether they've accomplished that goal until they're in the house, things are unboxed, they're there experiencing it, and they're saying, oh my gosh, it's everything we hoped for and more.
Yeah.
So think about when you're asking for the review. Most companies either ask for the review too early, before the goal's been accomplished, or they never ask at all. Pre-frame the customer that you're going to ask for the review, tell them when you're going to ask for it, and then when you get to that finish line, ask for it. If you do those things, you will have a much higher likelihood of not only getting positive reviews, but getting the very specific reviews that you can use in your marketing materials that outline the experience you actually deliver for a customer, so that a prospect can have a preview of what is to come.
How much do you like do with, like, from the lawyer side, leading questions when you're asking for reviews?
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of if a leading question in the movies, when everybody watches leading questions, the reason there are objections to leading questions is because it's obvious that the person's being led. And in my experience, most humans don't like being led into an answer based on the way you ask the question. Instead, what I like to do is give a preview of what I'm looking for. Here's what I mean by that. Lots of times when I survey my audiences, when I give speeches and I say, let me know what you thought of the speech, I ask the same question in 2 different ways. Number 1, pretend you're a reviewer for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or Fortune magazine. Write a review of your experience of seeing Joey speak. Now, by telling them New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Fortune, I want them to write something that's worthy of those publications. I want them to write something that details specifically what experience they had. The average person responding to that survey doesn't write, "It was really good." Because it was really good would never show up in the New York Times or Fortune magazine. They write something more effusive. The other thing I do is I give them a standard. I'll say something like, the greatest review I ever received from an audience member was as follows: Joey Coleman presents with the enthusiasm and excitement normally reserved for Mountain Dew commercials. Okay?
Yeah.
And then I say, if you feel compelled to give me something like that or better, I'd love to hear what you think. Well, now I've set the standard that I want something with a little bit of fun. I want something with a spark of personality. Going back to the very first conversation where we started, I want their character, their spirit to come out in the review. So I think you can go about this any number of ways. What I would encourage you not to do is just to say the typical NPS score question: on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to refer us to another customer? You can ask that, but don't let that be the only thing you ask. Go beyond and get into the more subjective narrative, asking them to tell a story or explain their experience as opposed to just give you a score on a scale of 1 to 10.
And then where do you land on asking for just like a written one versus like video testimonials?
I mean, if you feel like you have a good enough relationship to get the video, I love the video because we can scrape the audio and transcribe it to create the written. So we get 2 for the price of 1. The problem is most people don't like the way they look or sound on video, so they get anxious about it. So if you have the opportunity to work with someone who is in sales or is in marketing or is a personality that you know that they regularly do video, ask for video because they'll be happy to do it. If you're working with someone who is more introverted, more quiet, maybe more tight-collared, well, don't ask them to do a video because they're never going to do it. Ask them if they could give you a written one, or ask if they can call a number and leave a voicemail. And then you can get an audio review that, again, you can scrape and transcribe to turn into a written review. But now you have an audio that you could play a picture of the house you sold them with the audio running underneath it of the experience. And it's almost as good as the video of them looking in the camera telling the story themselves.
So one last one before we go. And I always like to ask the guests who aren't in real estate. 2
Awesome.
questions. And well, normally it's one question, but I want to add a second one for you. One is, if you had to find a real estate agent today because you wanted to move and you didn't know anyone right now, what would you do to find them? And the second one is, what would your expectations of customer service be from a real estate agent that you'd hire?
Let me invert the questions. Let me ask the second one first. All right. So there's some pretty interesting research in the United States from the National Association of Realtors that says, and I presume these statistics hold true for realtors in Canada as well. That I think they're going to be close enough. And if you know the specifics for Canada, please let me know. But I know you have listeners in both jurisdictions and around the world. If you were to ask the typical customer who's worked with a real estate agent what their experience was like with the real estate agent, in most markets, it's somewhere between 80 and 85% will tell you they had a great experience with their real estate agent after they've got their house. If you then go back to them when they buy their next house and you ask, how many of you worked with that great real estate agent that you worked with before? It's 11%. Why? Because most real estate agents stop caring about the customer once the ink is dry on the deal and they have the new keys. Yeah. The opportunity, I think, for all real estate agents is to continue the conversation in the months and years after the home is purchased, to continue building those connections so that when it comes time for them to buy their next house, they think positively of you. So what my hope would be, although it wouldn't be my expectation, knowing those stats, my hope would be to find the real estate agent that is interested in a lifelong relationship with me, not a transactional relationship with me. How would I go about finding that? Well, I do some of the things that I think most people do. I talk to people I know. I'd say, who's worked with an amazing real estate agent in this jurisdiction, and why do you think they're amazing? I would actually interview real estate agents, and I would pay most attention to the ones who actually listen. Here's the crazy thing. If you watch any of the HGTV programming about finding a new house, the thing that kills me about these programs is that they get a nice young couple or a person on the call. They're like, "Oh, what are you looking for?" "I'm looking for a 3-bedroom open concept. Our max budget is 500,000." And then what is the first house they show them? A 1.2 million 7-bedroom mansion on a golf course. And you're like, "What? What are you doing? That's like so far and beyond." I would like somebody who listened to what I had to say and showed me things in that range. Now, I'm not opposed to you showing me a couple things that are a little above or a couple things that are a little below. But if we've had a sincere conversation about what the goal is, if you can't deliver in that goal, don't tell me you can't. If I think the house is worth $1 million and I'm trying to sell it and you think it maxes out at 500,000, do me a favor, don't take the listing. Just don't take the listing. I know reality TV and all the real estate shows show you to take the listing and go crazy and shoot for the stars and hope for the best. Stop that. Stop that behavior. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. So long story short, Andrew, what I would do is try to find somebody that over-indexed on the experience they were going to deliver to me and that I had proof that they had done that before so that we could have a long-term relationship, not a once and done relationship.
Awesome. So if people wanted to get a hold of you, they wanted to get your book or anything like that, how do they reach out?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. A couple ways. So number one, the book is called Never Lose a Customer Again. It's available in hardcover. We've got an ebook you can get on Kindle and on other e-readers. We've got an audiobook. So if you've enjoyed listening to me today on the podcast, I can read you the whole book because I'm the narrator of the audiobook. So it's called Never Lose a Customer Again, available at your favorite online bookstore, your favorite in-person bookstore. You can get it pretty much anywhere. Another thing I'll suggest is if you've enjoyed our conversation today, I have my own podcast called The Experience This Show, which I co-host with my good buddy Dan Gingiss, who's got great customer experience with big brands like Discover Card and Humana and McDonald's. We do a regular weekly show. We're at like episode 103. We just recorded last night. So lots of little bite-sized morsels of customer experience delight if you're into this stuff and want to dive deeper. And the best place to find me is on my website, which is joeycoleman.com. That's Joey, like a 5-year-old, or a baby kangaroo, Joey. Coleman, Coleman, like the camping equipment, but no relation, joeycoleman.com. There's videos there. You can reach out to connect with me. You can get more information about the book. You can download a free starter kit that will show you how to implement the first 100 days methodology of creating remarkable experiences in your business. And I would just encourage folks, if you resonated with this story, if you resonated with this conversation, be part of the solution. Be out there creating remarkable customer experiences. Let me know how I can be of support. And I just appreciate everybody's time watching and listening today and your great questions, Andrew. I love the conversation. I wish we could have done it in person, and we'll have to do one in person in the future. But really appreciate you inviting me to be on your show.
Really appreciate you coming. And for anyone who goes and subscribes to his podcast, comment below with a screenshot of doing that. And I'll pick 10 after a week of airing, and I'll buy you guys a copy of the book.
Woo, I love it. And Andrew, we'll take it one step further. If we're going to buy them copies of the book, how about this? You send me the list and we'll sort it out. I'll personalize copies of the book for those people. Send it to them so we can give them, we'll one up their remarkable experience.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. And everyone stay tuned for next week when I don't know who the guest is yet, but we'll figure that out before it airs. Thanks, guys.